What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? Today, we're going to be hearing from somebody who apparently left atheism. And he has what I consider to be one of the more confusing and irrational reasons as to why somebody has left atheism or has reverted back to being religious in some kind of way. So, if you want to fuck around and find out what this very weird, convoluted reason for why this guy reverted back to religion, then please stay tuned.
Assalamu alaikum. Today, inshallah, we're going to go over a proof that God exists.
Awesome. That's what I'm here for, bro, Seth. Now, I really hope that this is some kind of new argument that hasn't been, stated before. Some kind of new way of thinking about God's existence. I don't want to hear the same old bullshit that we've heard from many other religious people before, and it's just, oh, now you're convinced because you had it explained to you in a certain way that, convinced you. I don't know, maybe this explanation of an old-ass argument will convince me. Who knows? This could be my last video as Godless Engineer.
Now, let's start with time. Time can be represented by a line. If you start here at the present and enumerate backwards -1, -2, -3, you will never reach minus infinity.
Well, that's primarily because infinity is a concept. It's not an actual number. And all infinity means is some, innumerably large number. Like it's so large it can't be represented, completely with numbers or something like that. So you say infinity. That doesn't mean that like a number line in which he's talking about has some kind of like a maximum value. I can't think of a maximum like real number value. Can you? I can't think of one other than just representing it as infinity, which again is a concept that true you'll never reach, but that's because it's a man-made concept.
That means that there is never a point in time at which minus infinity actually exists, and therefore the objects at minus infinity don't exist within time.
Well, again, considering that infinity is just a concept that we use in math to represent incredibly large numbers, and if we're thinking about time, then yeah, at negative infinity, there won't be any objects around because negative infinity doesn't exist as far as time goes. In our own current universe, we definitely have a start to the universe, which is where space and time first came into existence. So there is a definite hard stop. There is a maximum number. So there's no way that an infinite amount of time could exist for this universe.
Now, if our universe is eternal, that means that those objects must exist, since our universe must have had an infinite past.
But I do believe that everybody in this conversation agrees that this universe doesn't have an infinite past. Even on the scientific explanation, we don't say that there's an infinite past to the universe. Our universe inflated into existence 13, nearly 14 billion years ago? So, there's definitely a hard stop on the time scale as far as our universe goes. Now, if you want to talk outside of our universe, which we don't know if it exists or not, but if reality extends outside of our universe into other universes, then, as far as an infinite past goes, I don't know how you would really conceptualize that. Outside of the existence of time, does time exist, just in a different form? I don't understand this idea of extending time, our concept of time, outside of our own universe in order to suggest that there's an infinite past. It's nonsensical to extend time outside of our universe, or any physical universe that could exist.
Now, this leads to a contradiction, because those objects cannot exist, since there's never a point in time at which they do exist.
I don't see the contradiction here, simply because this is not the argument. He has created a straw man argument for the beginning of this universe, or the beginning of reality in general, in which there's this infinite past that exists. But that is not the conversation that's being had. So this straw man argument that he has created in this video should not convince anybody that a God exists, because this is not an idea that's being floated anywhere. So there's literally no way that a contradiction could exist unless he's talking about his own contradiction that he created.
And they must exist since our universe is eternal, has an eternal past, and is thus created by those objects.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't think that this universe is eternal. Most everybody that's having this particular kind of conversation about the beginning of the universe doesn't think that there was an infinite past that exists. We initially thought that like a steady state universe was what existed, like prior to the discovery of the inflation of the universe. But that idea has been dispelled since we discovered the inflation of the universe. So this is literally not a conversation that's being had.
Therefore, everything physical must have had a definitive beginning.
I mean, I can agree with this. Anything physical must have had a beginning, even if you trace that beginning all the way back to the inflation of the universe. So that's kind of the inflation of the universe is kind of the hard stop. Because before that, we can't really make sense of what time would be, or even if time existed, because the way that we currently experience time came into existence at the inflation of the universe. So it makes no sense to say any kind of time existed, at least in the same form, but prior to that point. So I agree. Every physical object had to have come into existence at one point in time.
That means that our universe must have been created by something else.
Well, I mean, for one thing, he's kind of begging the question here by saying that something created it. The whole created it kind of evokes in me, at least, this idea of a conscious decision being made. Like something was created. I don't think that it necessarily entails that, but I know in this particular conversation when people say, oh, this thing created that, it entails some kind of consciousness that chose to create something. And so, like, whenever we're talking about natural things, we talk about causes. Like, this caused that to be created, or this caused this next event. Not that this thing created this other thing. This thing caused this other event to happen. So to me, by saying created, it seems like a leading question. Like he's trying to lead his audience in a certain direction. I can agree that, things are caused by other things that happen. I don't know if that is in agreement with him or not. I just don't agree that things are created in the magical way of God.
Now, since this object created the universe, we could have this object, A, generates U.
Okay, this object A, which is the object that inflated the universe, the thing that is the cause for the inflation of the universe. Now, on a scientific standpoint, that would be just the fabric of reality, these quantum scalar fields where there was a false vacuum state, it fluctuated into a true vacuum state and released an immense amount of energy. That's what caused the inflation of the universe. I wouldn't go as far as to say that reality created this universe. I would say that as a part of the natural properties of reality, universes naturally form, is how I would specifically say it. I don't see the need for God in any of this. I totally agree that whatever fabric of reality or this object A that he's talking about could have caused the universe to come into existence just by the natural properties of it. That's not like any kind of creation event or any kind of conscious decision. That's just one of the various natural properties of the fabric of reality.
And since no other object created this system, it exists in and of itself. So, A generates A.
A generates A. I don't understand how he gets to A generates A. Maybe y'all can help me out, because what he's saying here, it just doesn't make sense, because, it's basically saying that God generates God is where he's leading to, right? Obviously, because he's left atheism and now he's religious of some kind. So God generates God. I guess maybe he's trying to say that God just exists, without the need for any kind of creation. I think that this is basically, you can't separate out the fabric of reality from God, because whatever the fabric of reality does, God is the one in a religious person's mind that actually makes a conscious decision. The difference is that I don't think the fabric of reality makes a conscious decision. So I feel like religious people often confuse the fabric of reality and its natural properties with God. Because if you think about it, if God were to exist, he is indistinguishable from the fabric of reality. He would be amoral. Things would just happen as a natural process, right? That's how we've always experienced things. So it seems like God is just indistinguishable from the natural fabric of reality. But of course, religious people want to think that God has a very personal connection with organisms, only one species of organisms on this tiny speck of dust amidst all of the universe where mostly nothing lives. Obviously, yes, he has a personal connection with us. But in any case, I digress. So if you want to say that the fabric of reality, or in his version, God is just eternal, I guess fine. I guess I don't see a problem with that, other than it kind of makes it seem like if God has this personal connection and has the ability to intervene in this universe, it kind of makes it seem like, he's special pleading for his God, saying that his God doesn't need to be created at all. He just is. I'm not saying that the fabric of reality didn't need to be created. I don't know if it needed to be created or if it came into existence naturally. I would bet, if I had to hedge my bets, I'd bet on it just naturally existing, or at least coming into existence one way or another. I don't think that we'll ever know. But the fact is that religious people constantly push the goalposts once you start to counter the holes in their story.
This leads to a contradiction. A generates A, and A generates U.
I don't see how that's a contradiction. I wish that he would expand upon this a little bit, because I don't understand why this is a contradiction. Primarily because if God can generate himself, or reality can generate itself, then what's to stop reality / God from generating humans, or on a more naturalistic perspective, cause humans to eventually come to exist, whereas God obviously is fucking creating shit like magic. I don't understand how it's mutually exclusive. Like, it's either that the fabric of reality has to create itself, or God has to create it himself, or create humans. Like, I don't understand how this is a contradiction.
The only way you could not have a contradiction is if you had A generates A or A generates U.
So, should I take that to mean that this guy thinks that God can either create another God, or God can create humans? Again, I don't understand why this is mutually exclusive. Also, if God did create everything, then God did create other divine beings. Just maybe not the same thing as God, although you can make the case that Jesus is in the image of God, and he also created humans in the image of God. So, how is this a contradiction? I don't get the contradiction here. Is there a contradiction? You heathens, let me know if you can actually see the contradiction, because maybe I'm just too stupid to understand. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below.
This would represent a choice. So the only thing that could create the universe is a being outside of the universe that made a decision to create the universe, and that is God.
I don't understand how this means that there has to be a God that made a conscious decision to create the universe. Because on the naturalistic perspective, the fabric of reality just exists, just like his God. And part of the natural properties of this fabric of reality is that quantum scalar fields exist. These quantum scalar fields are sometimes in false vacuum states. And on occasion, these quantum scalar fields in false vacuum states will fluctuate for some reason or no reason at all. They'll fluctuate from a false vacuum state to a true vacuum state. And when that happens, an immense amount of energy is released, a universe inflates, and it's so hot and dense that for 300,000 years, as we would experience time on this planet, fills the universe until it's able to cool down enough to where atoms can form, and then everything else forms in a slow process of evolution throughout the cosmos. I guess cosmological evolution or something like that. Shit just changes all the time, and everything is in fluctuation. I don't see a need for any kind of personal decision in that particular process, and it explains everything that we've been able to detect so far. We don't need a God to make a decision for this universe to come into existence. So him saying that the only explanation that's possible or plausible is that a God made a personal decision in order to create this universe is ignoring a lot of the science, or maybe he's just ignorant of it. Is this just a giant argument from ignorance? It seems like a giant argument from ignorance, considering it's just basically the cosmological argument that God had to be the one to create the universe for whatever reason that they want to pick out at that particular time. But given the scientific explanations for everything in this process, I don't see the need for God. Well, heathens, that was his proof. I guess the reason why he reverted back to religion and left atheism was a really poorly formed cosmological argument. I don't know. It's hard for me to believe that somebody could be convinced to believe in God because of a bad argument like that. I don't know. Maybe I've just been an atheist way too long, and I've heard the same bad arguments far too many times to be convinced by such a simplistic and nonsensical argument. I don't know. Let me know down below if you were convinced, though. I'd really love to hear y'all's feedback about this guy's argument. It seems like just a bare bones, like, cosmological argument that depends on some kind of personal choice made by a god. I don't find that all that convincing, but I want to know what you guys think. So leave those comments down below, and hey, while you're down there, why don't you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of content. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.